From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I'm Carla Gonzalez, and this is From the South. Supporters of Brazil's former president, Luiz Inacio Lula da Silva, have been protesting angrily after the head of a regional court overturned an earlier decision to release him from jail. The legal debate raged throughout the day on Sunday. Mia Alberti has more on the back and forth that almost got Lula free.
A legal battle never seen before. For more than 7 hours, two judges of the 4th Regional Federal Court in Brazil went back and forth, debating whether or not to release former Brazilian President Lula da Silva from jail. But in the end, the president of the court, Thomson Flores, intervened and decided that the former president would remain in custody. Lula supporters have called the decision an attack on Brazil's constitution.
There is so much maneuvering for Lula to stay in prison. Why does Lula need to be in prison when he has the right to be released? Why do we see these administrative moves that are not legal? This is embarrassing for Brazil in the face of the world.
Lula's habeas corpus was first granted by Judge Rogério Favreto early Sunday. He argued that Lula's imprisonment was keeping him from participating in the current electoral campaign. Then, federal judge Sérgio Moro, who first prosecuted Lula as part of the car wash operation, blocked the decision. But Moro was actually on vacation at the time and so had no authority over the case. So then Favreto ordered Lula's release again. It was blocked, this time by Judge Jair Neto, in charge of Lula's case in the regional court. He said that he had legal authority over the case. Favreto disagreed and called the authority back to him, and Lula's release was ordered for the 3rd time. Finally, the president of the regional court decided Lula would remain in jail. He said the argument regarding the electoral campaign wasn't relevant to authorize his release. An end to the hopes of hundreds of Lula supporters who rallied across the country, but the beginning of a legal hangover within the Brazilian judicial system, says top lawyer Marco Aurélio.
Brazil is living a sad day in the history of its democracy. Unfortunately, our country is moving fast towards a state of exception, and the juristic community is already there. Unfortunately, judicial activism is an embarrassing reality in our country.
A day that won't be easily forgotten in Brazil after it revealed the frailties of a system that should be trustworthy. Lula is still in jail, serving a 12-year sentence for corruption and money laundering. And although his opponents believe he should stay there, his legal team is working round the clock to release him in hopes that he can still run for the presidential elections in October. This is Mia Alberti, Telesur in São Paulo.
And congressmen supporting Lula criticized the judge's decision and the police for refusing to free the former president, currently serving a 12-year prison sentence in Curitiba on corruption charges.
The non-compliance of a court order which happened here today was the disobedience of a court order, which shows clear symptoms of anarchy in the judicial power.
Whatever mask that still existed about the selectivity, the way in which this case was handled, today it disappeared. We are witnessing an act organized by the federal police, the public prosecutor, Judge Sergio Moro, and Judge João Pedro Gebran, who acted in a coordinated and linked way so that a court order was not obeyed.
And these are images of hundreds of Lula supporters that took to the streets of Sao Paulo and Rio de Janeiro to demand the release of the political leader from prison. Others joined the protests near the federal police headquarters in Curitiba and also outside the Steel Workers Union in São Bernardo do Campo, to demand his freedom.
It's a tragedy. It's a real breach of a decision of a habeas corpus from a judge who has not been respected in Brazil. It's very serious. We are stunned, very amazed at what is happening in our country right now. It's a major attack on democratic freedoms.
I don't believe much in justice because they make fun of us. I have more hopes in the mobilization that will take place tomorrow. Maybe the judicial system will understand that justice is for the people and that Lula is part of the people, and the people say it's unfair what they're doing to him. It's unfair to the working class who has no candidate to vote for.
In other stories, a two-day general strike is starting in Haiti after a weekend of violent protests against a proposed fuel price hike. Looting broke out in the heart of the capital, Port-au-Prince, as cars and containers were burnt. Protesters clashed with police who used tear gas against them. Despite the government's withdrawal of its plans, the protesters are demanding the removal of President Jovenel Moïse.
Friday afternoon, after the Brazil game, I came here to deal with a thing that I had to do. Trouble started. Streets were blocked. I couldn't go down to Delmas where I live. I took the chance of leaving my car here. Saturday morning I came back. The car was fine, but I still couldn't leave because the streets were still closed.
And flights at Port-au-Prince airport were grounded by the Haitian government on Sunday. Dozens of travelers were left stranded in the terminal. But according to local media, at least 3 of the canceled flights finally took off in the evening, heading to the United States. The Caribbean community, CARICOM, says it is deeply concerned about the violent protests in Haiti. In a statement on behalf of the member states, the Prime Minister of Jamaica, Andrew Holness, wrote, "The community deplores the loss of life, property and the damage to infrastructure and calls for restraint and an end to the protest and the violence." Thousands took to the streets in Nicaragua to demand peace and the end of violence caused by certain opposition groups since April 18.
Families and people of all ages raised red and black as well as blue and white flags as they march for peace.
We want a peaceful country where the rich and the poor can share. Nicaragua belongs to everyone.
Messages of love, peace, and nonviolence were spread by demonstrators who also sang songs in support of Sandinista ideals.
I'm here because I support peace and reconciliation. We want to live in a safe country where our children can grow. We don't want this uncertainty, this insecurity. It's absurd.
President Daniel Ortega surprised demonstrators with his presence. He arrived to support the thousands of Nicaraguans that march in favor of peace and the Sandinista front. He reminded everyone that the people are the ones in charge.
The coup plotters want power. They should work to win the vote of the people. We shall see if the people vote for them after having provoked so much violence. Time will come for elections, as law mandates. Everything comes in its time.
Ortega also said that those areas that the opposition and those complicit in the media call peaceful protest areas have been turned into torture and terrorism centers, promoting hate and serious crimes.
Murderers are those who finance and encourage these crimes. Murderers who must stop these crimes at once.
The Episcopal Conference has called for the national dialogue to restart on Monday at 10 a.m. local time.
Meanwhile, the Nicaraguan opposition have called for a national strike this coming Friday. Students, businessmen, and the Civic Alliance will first march on Thursday to ask for the resignation of President Daniel Ortega and his wife and Vice President Rosario Murillo before the general strike the day after. The call comes after Ortega ruled out early elections, a demand made by the opposition to resume the dialogue with the government. The violence has left 205 people dead since April, according to figures of the Commission for Truth, Peace and Justice.
On Friday, we will hold a national strike. We have made a call in consensus with the private sector and other sectors within the Civic Alliance to carry out a national strike for 24 hours.
We are asking companies, asking the entire private sector, all the small, medium and large businesses of the country to close on July 13th.
We'll take a short break now, but join us again after this video from our multimedia team.
Cambiará la estrategia fallida de combate a la inseguridad y a la violencia. Más que el uso de la fuerza, atenderemos las causas que originan la inseguridad y la violencia. Estoy convencido de que la forma más eficaz y más humana de enfrentar estos males exige necesariamente del combate a la desigualdad y a la pobreza.
Entrando él rápidamente va a tomar decisiones muy fuertes, ¿no? Como esto de la iniciativa, como esto de la justicia transicional, como esto de las comisiones de la verdad, como esto de un proceso de pacificación del país, como esto de una recomposición social, un respeto a las instituciones.
Welcome back. On to Colombia now, where there is growing outrage over the murders of social leaders. People have gathered in public spaces across the country to reject the killings and to demand that the government do more to protect the lives of activists.
Thousands of Colombians joined the march called Mobilization to Protect Life, to condemn the murders and show solidarity with the victims.
People are angry because more than 400 leaders have been murdered after signing the peace agreement. The oligarchy has deceived us.
Colombians raise their voices to stop the slaying of those who have worked hard to bring peace to different territories.
Respect for life, respect for dignity, respect for freedom of speech. We want peace. Peace is not built with bullets. Peace is built with social justice.
More than 100 social leaders have been assassinated so far in 2018, and around 400 since the signing of the peace agreement. People denounce the constant threat imposed by paramilitary groups in rural areas, and the murder, stigmatization, and persecution of human rights activists.
Do not murder us because we think differently. They can shut us down.
The government's dirty hands are behind this because it is presumed that the paramilitaries have never demobilized.
The citizens say they fear for the arrival of the elected president, Iván Duque, because he represents the interests of the extreme right, putting at risk to the peace agreement and threatening social movements in Colombia.
The new government has a lot to work on. It is incredible that the murders of social leaders are on the rise. In 8 days, 15 people have been murdered, and coincidentally, they are always the ones that supported the candidacy against Iván Duque.
The flags of various social organizations are also waving as a way to demand the implementation of the peace agreement achieved with the FARC.
After seeing hundreds of people in many other cities, we're going to win the fight for reconciliation and peace.
A minute's silence was observed to pay tribute to the leaders, and a candle was raised, a symbol of hope for Colombians to continue working for peace and fighting for the legacy of leaders who have been killed.
Also in Colombia, indigenous people served justice on 2 members of the National Liberation Army, or ELN. The indigenous community of Caloto in the southern department of Cauca sentenced each of them to 37 lashes and 8 years in prison. The guerrillas were accused of an attack with explosive and abuse of the population. The indigenous authorities also seized a rifle, a grenade, and other weapons which were destroyed at the community's assembly.
We don't want any armed groups within the territory. We have told them that. We have been clear. In the indigenous town of Coronito, we gave the guerrillas time to clear out of the territory so that they can leave. But no, they didn't do it, and instead of leaving, they bring more people.
The National Electoral Institute in Mexico has officially confirmed that the left-wing leader Andrés Manuel López Obrador won the presidential election on July 1st, as the counting of the ballots finally ended. The results gave López Obrador 53.19% of the votes, that is more than 30 million votes. The president-elect has said he will seek reconciliation amongst all Mexicans. Social movements have promised to support him, but they also demand he keeps the promises made during the campaign.
Nada les cuadra que Andrés los enseñe a gobernar.
Members of the Citizen Mailbox Collective have supported López Obrador since 2006, when he first ran for president.
Queremos un México con democracia.
We want a Mexico with democracy, where people have the possibilities to move forward, to develop, that everyone has opportunities to study, to work, to have the same rights, and to end discrimination.
They say they are satisfied with the result of the election, and they will continue supporting López Obrador and the Partido Nacional Regeneration Movement that obtained the majority in the Chamber of Deputies and the Senate and won in 31 of the 32 states.
This victory can be explained by what we are seeing here at this moment, in the meeting of neighbors and by the participation of grassroots movements, workers, settlers, peasants of the Republic who followed with the campaign with affection.
He started to meet with businessmen, with politicians. Everyone started to meet with him, and we're here. He's going to meet with us, but if he doesn't, it's up to us to demand to be heard, to demand not only to say yes to everything, or no to everything.
During the campaign, López Obrador committed to review work on the lands near Texcoco.
They were infatuated with this new airport. Instead, they could do 2 airport runways.
Meanwhile, the group Fiscalía que Sirva is demanding that whomever runs the country from December 1st reconsider the proposal to appoint a general attorney from the board of directors. They believed it reduces autonomy to the figure in charge of the dispensation of justice.
Still in Mexico, a series of attacks at bars in the northern state of Nuevo León left at least 12 people dead over the weekend. The authorities say 3 simultaneous attacks were carried out on Saturday night and were all related. The highest number of victims was at a bar in the city of Juárez, where 6 people were killed. The 2 other attacks were carried out in Guadalupe and Monterrey. 2017 was the deadliest year for Mexico, with more than 25,000 murders registered. Activists in the United States have been protesting against the detention of undocumented trans people and LGBTI immigrants, as they say they are doubly persecuted. Dozens gathered in front of the West County Detention Facility in Richmond, Virginia on Sunday to demand justice for trans, queer, and non-binary migrants. Activists say LGBTI people face particularly brutal treatment in the U.S. system. They say many trans women are sexually assaulted after being locked up with men for extended periods of time.
We are here because the LGBTQ community, who is an immigrant community, is doubly persecuted by the system. They not only fighting for staying alive in our countries of origin, but they also are coming to this country and being apprehended in places where they don't receive their proper medical attention or the attention they need because of their gender expression.
They're detained in terrible conditions and don't receive medical care, and there's been at least one case recently of a transgender woman, Roxana Hernandez, who died in detention, and she, like many others, have died of neglect from medical attention, and there's also a terrible epidemic of sexual assault against transgender detainees.
In the Argentinian Pampa, glyphosate has opened a debate between those who believe it is essential to their crops and those who denounce its alleged dire health and environmental effects. In the province of Córdoba, clashes take place every day in the countryside between farmers and activists. According to the World Health Organization, glyphosate is probably carcinogenic, but it is required to maintain crops with transgenic seeds. Despite that this herbicide has been widely used since the 90s, there is no specific legislation in the country to regulate fumigations. Now to the World Cup, as the semi-finals start on July 10th with two great matches. 1998 World Cup champions France will play against Belgium, and Croatia will face England. The Brazilian national football team returned home on Sunday after being eliminated from the World Cup by Belgium. Fans wearing the team's jersey cheered for the players at the airport in Rio de Janeiro. Since winning the World Cup for the 5th time in Japan in 2002, Brazil has been knocked out during the quarterfinals at 3 of the last 4 World Cup tournaments. We'll take one last short break, but join us after another video from our multimedia team.
So she's basically said no hats, no shirts, no socks. We have 2 men who are her friends and right here in hats. We are the only black people out here, and as soon as we walked up, she had something to say. We have bothered no one, we have said anything to no one.
Thanks for joining us again. 4 more boys have been rescued from the flooded Tham Luang cave in Thailand on Monday, bringing the total rescued to 8. A fleet of ambulances and a helicopter have been transferring the rescued boys to a hospital in Chiang Rai, as rescue operations have been suspended for the day. 4 boys and their football coach remain in the cave, where they have been trapped for more than 2 weeks. Earlier, authorities said it would take up to 4 more days to rescue all of them.
They are well and happy, but they will have to be kept away from their parents or others for a while, because we are concerned about infections. Doctors are considering whether to allow the families to visit them, but at a distance or through a glass.
Dominic Raab has been named Britain's new Minister for Brexit, a day after David Davis resigned from the post. Davis, who has been a long champion of Britain leaving the European Union, resigned because of disagreements with Prime Minister Theresa May and her policy on Brexit. He said he no longer believes in the Brexit plan or the negotiation tactics of the government. Steve Baker, a junior minister in the Brexit department, also resigned.
Reflecting our actions since the
Floods in Japan have killed more than 100. Here's more on that and other stories making headlines around the world.
Over 100 people have been killed and dozens are still missing after unprecedented rains flooded many parts of western and central Japan. According to the meteorological department, since Thursday, the affected areas received 3 times the amount of usual rain, causing rivers to burst their banks and prompting landslides. The government has ordered that 2 million people be evacuated. Rescue operations are underway.
We have not been able to confirm the safety of quite a lot of people, and there are many who are stranded, facing the terror of impending flooding, and waiting for rescue. Our rescue operations are now a race against the clock.
UK police have launched a murder inquiry following the death of a 44-year-old British woman who was exposed to the Novichok nerve agent in Amesbury last week when she was found unconscious along with her partner in their home. Britain has once again accused Russia of the poisoning, as the nerve agent used on the 2 citizens is the same that was used on former Russian spy Sergei Skripal and his daughter in March. Afghan and US Special Forces have been conducting military operations to break the Islamic State group's stronghold in the province of Nangarhar in eastern Afghanistan. They have launched operations to clear the area of militants and enable civilians to return to their villages. The ongoing operation has killed more than 160 IS militants in recent days.
Recep Tayyip Erdogan will be sworn in as the president of Turkey in the coming hours, following his victory in last month's election. He will also announce the member of his cabinet. The leader of the Justice and Development Party, in alliance with the Nationalist Movement Party, won over 52% of the votes in the presidential election. With new constitutional changes, Erdogan will have more executive powers. The swearing-in ceremony will take place in the capital, Ankara. It's been attended by dozens of foreign leaders, including Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro. And with that, we come to the end of this news brief. But as you know, there's another stories you can find on our website at telesurtv.net/English. And you can also follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Carla González. Thank you for watching.